Can't resist the backdrop. So PAN, pupil admission numbers. This is something that's going to become a hot topic, I think, in the next few days. So every school gets a pupil admission number on how many kids they're allowed to intake. So say, for example, my school has a pupil admission number of 150 in year 7, and we are a outstanding Ofsted school. If you play with that pupil admission number, which is what Bridget Phillipson is going to do, if you cut it and say it's now only going to be 100 pupils, then I've lost 50 pupils. Where do they go? Well, they are redistributed to the underperforming or the Ofsted not as good schools in the area. So if you've moved to a catchment area so that you can get the Ofsted good school, and Bridget Phillipson now lowers those numbers, you won't be able to get it, and you will be moved into one of the other schools. The idea being that those children will boost the standards of the other school. Well, what that also does is reduce the funding. So the Ofsted outstanding school is now funded 50 pupils less. So they've got to maintain their standards with less funding. And the funding goes into the poorer schools in terms of academic outcome, in terms of achievement, but also in terms of finance. So they get a bit more funding because they've got more kids. So the experiment here is, how do we raise the standards in the Ofsted schools that aren't as performing as well? Well, we move the kids from the good schools into the bad schools, and then we raise the standards that way. We cut the funding in the good schools because we've taken the kids out, and the funding goes into the poor schools. And this all has to happen in lifetime with your child as part of that process. So lots of people are rightly complaining that the PAN numbers have been changed from last academic year to this coming academic year, and there are less places available in the Ofsted good and outstanding schools. So what happens to those children when they don't get their first choice of that school? Will they go to wherever the second or the third choice was, which invariably won't be as good? Now, it's a live experiment. It's happening. You know, we need to see whether this is going to work. Is it going to raise the standards? What's going to happen? What's going to happen to the Ofsted good school now that it's got less funding? There will be obviously more appeals, as parents will appeal their places. And how quickly does that funding and do the changes happen in the Ofsted underperforming schools? And did anyone know about this in the first place? And the answer is, well, no, obviously. That wasn't going to be shouted from the rooftops, was it? That, you know, all of the parents that have spent money, time, effort and energy moving to the catchments of the outstanding schools are now no longer going to get them, which sort of touches base with the buying an education, because, of course, for a long time, it's only been parents of private schools that have been penalised for buying the education with the imposition of 20% VAT on their fees. But now, of course, you're being penalised if you've moved to an area where the catchment area, you're in the catchment area of the good school, but now they're suddenly going to take less students. So every which way and how that you look at it, the 11 plus is the next one, where, you know, they're becoming hot houses, and tutors, people are travelling like 4 miles to get to a good tutor to get their kid through the 11 plus so that they can get the good grammar school. But of course we know that grammar schools are next on the list for the ones that are going to get cut, grammar and selective. So unless ultimately you aspire to go to a state school that is not good, then your needs probably won't be met. And this is all happening under everyone's noses, but of course it's not really being spoken about, because why would it be spoken about? Because if it was spoken about, there would be uproar. So I'm sort of giving this as my gift to you today. Go and do a bit of investigation. Of course, as this unravels, there will be more complexities to it. There will be lots of rhetoric coming from it. But when you hear driving high and rising standards, bear in mind that it's most likely your child that's being used in that experiment to drive those high and rising standards. It's not a cash injection. Well, there is no cash injection from the VAT policy, so that one's failed. It is playing around with PAN numbers. And I think we're going to hear a lot about PAN over the next few weeks. And we're going to see an awful lot of state parents, understandably, more than a bit pissed off.